I never believed in the back rooms, not until I found myself trapped in that endless maze of yellow walls and fluorescent nightmares. My name is Marcus, and what I'm about to tell you happened 3 months ago. 3 months that feel like 3 lifetimes. I was a skeptic, a debunker of urban legends and internet folklore. I ran a small YouTube channel dedicated to exposing fake paranormal content. The irony isn't lost on me now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because I was supposed to meet my girlfriend Sarah for lunch, but I'd gotten caught up investigating an abandoned office building in downtown Portland. The building had been the subject of numerous backroom sighting videos, and I was determined to prove they were all staged. The structure was a relic from the 1980s. All beige carpeting and water-stained drop ceilings, perfect for faking backrooms content. I was on the 7th floor recording with my phone when it happened. I was walking backward, explaining to my future audience how easy it would be to fake a no-clip-up event when I stepped through what should have been a solid wall. One moment I was in the abandoned office, the next I was somewhere else entirely. The smell hit me first, that distinct odor of old carpet, mildew, and something else, something organic and wrong. The walls around me were that infamous shade of yellow, like aged manila folders or dying teeth. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly, oscillating glow. My phone had no signal. Of course, it didn't. I laughed at first. I actually laughed. This had to be an elaborate prank, right? Someone had drugged me, moved me to a movie set, something rational. But as I walked and walked and walked, the reality began to sink in. This place was vast, impossibly vast. Every corridor looked identical, every room a carbon copy of the last. The carpet beneath my feet was damp in places, and I tried not to think about what might be causing that dampness. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time worked differently in that place. My phone's battery was draining faster than it should have, and the timestamp kept glitching, showing impossible dates and times. I documented everything, partly out of habit, partly because hearing my own voice kept me sane. Day 1, I'd say into the camera. Still no exit, the walls are definitely real. The sound carries strangely here. There's an echo that doesn't match the space. That echo would become important later. I established a routine, walk for what felt like hours, rest in corners where the fluorescent lights were dimmer, tried to find some landmark or variation in the endless monotony. I marked walls with my keys, trying to create a mental map, but the marks would disappear when I returned to the same spots. At least, I thought they were the same spots. The hunger started on what I estimated was day 3. I had a granola bar in my pocket and a half-empty water bottle, but I rationed them carefully. The back rooms provided no sustenance, no water fountains, no vending machines, just endless yellow walls and that persistent, maddening hum of fluorescent lights. It was during one of my rest periods that I first heard the breathing. I thought it was my own at first, echoing off the walls in that strange way sound traveled in this place. But when I held my breath, it continued, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere deeper in the maze. My rational mind tried to explain it away. Air circulation, pipes, structural settling. But deep down, I knew I wasn't alone. The breathing followed me, always distant, always just out of sight, but getting closer. I started moving faster, trying to lose whatever was making that sound. But you can't lose something in a place where every direction leads to the same nowhere. The breathing grew stronger, more pronounced. Sometimes it sounded human. Sometimes it didn't. I was losing my mind. Had to be. The isolation, the hunger, the constant yellow pressing in from all sides. It was driving me insane. That's when I started talking to myself more frequently, having full conversations with an imaginary companion just to hear different voices. I named her Echo because she only repeated what I said, variations of my own thoughts bouncing back at me. We need to find a way out, I'd say. Find a way out, Echo would respond, her voice a whisper that seemed to come from the walls themselves. This place can't be infinite. Can't be infinite. She'd agree, though something in her tone suggested she wasn't so sure. Echo became my constant companion. She was there when I woke up in corners, curled against walls that wept with condensation. She was there when I found the first anomaly, a door that was slightly ajar when all the others had been sealed shut. Behind it was a small office space complete with a desk, a chair, and a computer that hummed with life despite having no visible power source. The screen showed a simple text document, a journal entry, not mine. Day 8, 47. The breathing is getting louder. I think it knows. I can hear it. Sarah, if you're reading this, I never made it to lunch. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The walls are listening now. They repeat everything back, but wrong, twisted. My echo has become something else, something hungry. My blood turned to ice. This was my handwriting. These were my words. But I'd only been here for days, not years. And that reference to Sarah to the lunch I'd missed. How could someone else know about that? I scrolled down. More entries, hundreds of them, all in my handwriting, all describing experiences I hadn't had yet. Future entries describing days and weeks and months of trapped existence, describing the breathing getting closer, describing echo changing, becoming more independent, more hostile. Day 1, 203. Echo doesn't repeat anymore. She speaks first now. She tells me things I don't want to know, about the others who came before, about what happens when the breathing catches up, about what I'm going to become. I slammed the laptop shut and ran, but Echo followed, her voice no longer just repeating my words. You can't run from yourself, Marcus, she said, and her voice was changing, becoming deeper, more guttural. You can't run from what you're becoming. The breathing was getting closer. I could feel it now, a presence that moved through the walls themselves. The fluorescent lights flickered more frequently, and in the moments of darkness, I could swear I saw shapes moving in the corners of my vision. Tall, wrong shapes that didn't quite fit the geometry of the space. I found more computers, more journal entries, all mine, all describing a future I was living in real time. The timestamps made no sense. Some were dated years in the past, others decades in the future, but they all told the same story. A man named Marcus trapped in the back rooms, slowly losing his mind as something hunted him through the endless maze. The entries got darker. They described Echo's transformation from imaginary friend to hostile entity. They described the breathing getting closer until it was right behind me, until I could feel hot breath on my neck. They described the moment when I realized the truth. I wasn't the first Marcus to be trapped here. The backrooms didn't just capture people, it captured echoes of people. Fragments of consciousness that repeated the same patterns, the same discoveries, the same slow descent into madness. Every Marcus who had ever been trapped here left traces, journal entries, warnings for the next iteration. And every echo was the remnant of a previous Marcus's sanity, transformed into something hostile and hungry. The breathing wasn't coming from some monster hunting me through the maze. It was coming from the other Marcus variants, the ones who had been here so long they'd forgotten how to be human, the ones who had become part of the back rooms itself. You're starting to understand, Echo said, and when I turned to look at her, she was no longer invisible. She stood at the end of the corridor, tall and wrong, her features a twisted reflection of my own. You're starting to remember. That's when the memories started flooding back. Not just my memories, but the memories of every Marcus who had come before. The businessman who had no clip during a conference call, the urban explorer who had fallen through a floor, the janitor who had opened the wrong door, the YouTuber who had been debunking backrooms videos. We were all the same person, different lives, different circumstances, but the same essential pattern. The same skeptical nature that led us to investigate. The same rational mind that refused to accept the impossible until it was too late. The same name, the same face, the same girlfriend named Sarah, who we'd never see again. The back rooms didn't just trap people. It trapped the same person over and over in an endless cycle of discovery and despair. Every Marcus was a new iteration born from the collective unconscious of everyone who had ever heard of the backrooms and wondered what if. We were living urban legends trapped in our own mythology. How many? I asked Echo, though I already knew the answer. Thousands, she replied. Tens of thousands. Every time someone creates a backrooms video, every time someone writes a story, every time someone imagines what it would be like to be trapped here, another Marcus is born, another Echo begins to form. The breathing was all around me now. The other Marcus variants, the ones who had been here so long they'd forgotten their original forms. They moved through the walls like ghosts. Their essence merged with the yellow paint and fluorescent lights. They were the backrooms, and the backrooms were them. What happens now? I asked. Echo smiled, and her face was my face twisted with madness and years of isolation. Now you choose. You can fight it like the others did. You can rage against the infinite, document your slow descent into madness. Leave warnings for the next Marcus that he'll ignore just like you ignored the ones before. Or you can accept what you are, what we all are. Stop fighting the Echo and become part of it. Join the breathing in the walls. Help create the next iteration. I looked at my phone. The battery was at 3%. In a few hours, it would die, and I'd lose my connection to the world I'd left behind. I'd become just another ghost in the yellow maze, just another breath in the walls. But I had a choice. I could document this, upload it somehow, find a way to break the cycle. I could be the Marcus who finally escaped, who finally found the exit that had to exist somewhere in this infinite space. Except I looked at the timestamp on my phone. The date was wrong. It showed a day 3 weeks in the past, the day before I'd entered the abandoned office building. The day before I'd no-clipped into this nightmare. I wasn't living this experience. I was remembering it. I was the Echo now. The remnant of a Marcus who had made his choice long ago. And somewhere in the yellow maze, a new Marcus was just beginning his journey, just starting to hear the breathing in the walls. The cycle continued, the Echo repeated. And in the fluorescent-lit infinity of the back rooms, 10 zero versions of myself breathed in unison, waiting for the next skeptic to stumble into our endless horror. I am Marcus. I am Echo. I am the breathing in the walls. And you who are reading this, you might be next. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I staggered backward, my phone slipping from my trembling hands and clattering to the damp carpet. The screen cracked but continued to glow, casting fractured light across the yellow walls. Echo watched me with eyes that were mine but not mine, filled with a terrible patience that spoke of eons spent in this place. "You're lying," I whispered. But even as I said it, I could feel the truth settling into my bones like a chill. The memories were there, layered beneath my consciousness like sediment. Lives upon lives, all ending in the same yellow maze, all facing the same impossible choice. Am I? Echo tilted her head, and the motion was eerily familiar. I'd done that exact gesture countless times, usually when I was about to deliver a particularly devastating debunk on my channel. Check your pockets, Marcus. What do you find? With shaking hands, I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers closed around something that shouldn't have been there. A business card yellowed with age, the text barely legible. Marcus Chen, paranormal investigator. But that wasn't my name. My name was Marcus Rivera, wasn't it? I reached into my other pocket, another card, Marcus Thompson, urban explorer. Then another Marcus Kowalski, security guard. More and more cards, each bearing a different last name, but the same first name, the same profession that had led them, led me, led us into this place. We're all variations on a theme, Echo explained, her voice growing stronger as my certainty crumbled. The backrooms doesn't just capture random people, it captures specific types. The curious, the skeptical, the ones who poke at mysteries until they fall through the cracks in reality, and somehow, some way, we're all named Marcus. I thought about the journal entries I'd found on the computer, all in my handwriting, but describing experiences that spanned decades. Now I understood they weren't my future entries. They were the accumulated documentation of every Marcus who had ever been trapped here, their memories and experiences bleeding together into a collective unconscious that the backrooms fed upon. The breathing, I said, understanding flooding through me. It's not one thing hunting us. It's all of us. Every Marcus who gave up, who stopped fighting, who accepted what this place wanted them to become, Echo nodded approvingly. Now you're starting to understand. The backrooms isn't just a place, Marcus. It's a story. A modern mythology that feeds on our collective fear of infinite, meaningless spaces. And stories need characters. They need protagonists who discover the truth, who face the horror, who make the ultimate choice. I bent down and picked up my phone, ignoring the spreading crack across the screen. The battery was at 2% now, but I made videos debunking this stuff. I proved it was fake. Did you? Echo's smile was sad now, tinged with something that might have been pity. Or did you just prove that some specific videos were fake? The concept remained, didn't it? The idea of the back rooms, the fear of no clipping into an endless yellow nightmare. Your debunking videos probably introduced more people to the concept than they converted away from it. She was right. I remembered the comments on my videos. The way people would say things like, even though I know it's fake, it still creeps me out. Or what if there really was a place like this? I thought I was fighting urban legends, but I'd actually been feeding them, adding to the collective unconscious that gave places like this their power. So, what am I? I asked. Am I real? Are any of us real? Define real, Echo said. You have thoughts, memories, fears. You can feel pain, hunger, desperation. You're as real as any fictional character who's ever moved someone to tears or kept them awake at night. The question isn't whether you're real. The question is whether you're willing to accept what you are. I looked around at the endless yellow corridors, the flickering fluorescent lights, the impossible geometry that folded in on itself like a fever dream. Somewhere in this maze, another Marcus was just beginning his journey, and another, an infinite succession of skeptics and investigators, all following the same path to the same revelation. What happens if I refuse? I asked. What happens if I don't play along with this narrative? Echo's expression darkened. You've read the journal entries. You know what happens to the ones who fight it. They become the breathing in the walls. They become the thing that hunts the next Marcus through the maze. They lose themselves completely, becoming nothing but hunger and desperation, and the need to make someone else understand what they've understood. As if summoned by her words, the breathing grew louder. I could hear it coming from multiple directions now, a chorus of rasping inhalations that seemed to echo through the very structure of the back rooms. The fluorescent lights flickered more frantically, and in the moments of darkness, I could see them. Shapes that had once been human, now stretched and twisted by years of fighting against an impossible reality. They had been Marcus once, all of them, but they had refused to accept their role in the story. And so they had become something else, something that existed only to create fear, to drive the next protagonist toward the same choice they had faced and failed to make correctly. There's a third option, I said suddenly, the idea crystallizing in my mind. I don't have to choose between accepting this or becoming one of those things. I can change the story. Echo laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Change the story, Marcus. You are the story. You're a character in a narrative that's been told and retold thousands of times. You can't change it any more than Hamlet can decide not to be melancholy or Dracula can choose to enjoy garlic bread. But I was already moving, heading toward the nearest computer terminal. My phone battery was at 1% now. but I still had the crack in the screen that cast fractured light. I could use that light to see, to navigate, to find what I was looking for. "What are you doing?" Echo demanded, her voice losing its patient amusement. "I'm a YouTuber," I said, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I accessed the terminal. "I know how stories work in the digital age. They're not fixed things anymore. They evolve, they change, they get remixed and reinterpreted by everyone who encounters them. Maybe I can't change the fundamental narrative, but I can add something new to it." The screen flickered to life, showing the same journal interface I'd found before. But now, I could see more options, more files, the accumulated documentation of thousands of Marcus variants, all their discoveries and revelations stored in this digital archive. And at the bottom of the file list, a new option I hadn't noticed before: upload. "You can't," Echo said, but her voice was uncertain now. "The back rooms don't connect to the outside world. There's no internet here, no signal, no way to communicate with the real world." I smiled grimly. "The back rooms are a story, remember? And stories want to be told. They want to spread, to find new audiences, to evolve and grow. Maybe this place is more connected than we think." My phone died just as I finished typing. The screen went black, leaving me in the sickly glow of the fluorescent lights, but the computer terminal was still active, still connected to something. I couldn't see where the upload was going, but I could feel it happening. The story was expanding, reaching out through whatever impossible network connected this place to the collective unconscious of humanity. Echo was changing. Her form was becoming less stable, flickering between different versions of Marcus Y had been. The businessman, the explorer, the security guard, the YouTuber. All of them superimposed on each other, all of them struggling to maintain their individual identities as the narrative shifted around them. "What have you done?" she whispered. "I've added a new chapter," I said. "A Marcus who doesn't just accept his fate or fight against it. A Marcus who embraces what he is and uses it to change the rules of the game." The breathing in the walls was getting agitated. The twisted shapes that had once been Marcus variants were pressing closer, their forms becoming more visible as the lights flickered faster. They could sense the change, the disruption in the established pattern. For the first time in their existence, something new was happening. "You're going to break everything," Echo said, her voice now a chorus of all the Marcus variants who had ever existed. "The story needs to follow its pattern. The cycle needs to continue. If you change it too much, if you disrupt the narrative flow, then maybe the next Marcus won't be trapped," I finished. "Maybe the next person who no-clips into this place will find something different. Maybe, instead of an endless maze of despair, they'll find a story that's still being written, still evolving, still offering new possibilities." The computer terminal was overheating. Smoke was beginning to rise from its vents, and the screen was flickering wildly, but the upload was still in progress. Still pushing the expanded narrative out into whatever realm of collective consciousness the backrooms drew their power from. Echo lunged at me, her form now completely unstable, shifting between all the Marcus variants simultaneously. But as her hands reached for the keyboard, they passed right through it. She was losing coherence, becoming less real as the story changed around her. "You don't understand," she pleaded, her voice fading. "Without the cycle, without the pattern, we all cease to exist. Every Marcus who ever was, every Echo who ever formed, will all be forgotten, erased from the narrative." "Maybe," I said, watching as she continued to fade. "Or maybe we'll become something new, something that doesn't need to be trapped in an endless cycle of discovery and despair." The upload completed just as the computer terminal finally died in a shower of sparks. The fluorescent lights went out all at once, plunging the backrooms into absolute darkness. The breathing in the walls stopped. The twisted shapes of the failed Marcus variants froze in place, their forms barely visible in the emergency lighting that flickered on moments later. Everything was quiet. For the first time since I'd arrived in this place, Everything was completely, utterly quiet. I stood up from the dead computer and looked around. The yellow walls were still there, but they looked different somehow. Less oppressive, less infinite, more like what they actually were. A set, a stage, a carefully constructed environment designed to tell a specific story, but the story had changed, and with it, the rules of this place had changed too. I walked to the nearest wall and pushed against it. It felt solid enough, but when I pressed harder, my hand sank into it slightly, as if the wall were made of thick foam rather than solid matter. The back rooms were becoming less real, less concrete, as the narrative that sustained them evolved. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a sound I hadn't heard since arriving in this place. A door opening, not the sealed doors that had mocked me throughout my journey, but the sound of a real door opening onto real space beyond. I smiled and started walking toward the sound. Behind me, the emergency lights flickered and died, leaving the yellow maze in darkness. But ahead of me, there was light. Real light. Not the sickly glow of fluorescent tubes, but the warm, natural light of the outside world. I had changed the story. I had broken the cycle. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was walking towards something new. The light grew brighter as I approached, and with it came sounds I had almost forgotten. Traffic, voices, the hum of a city alive with human activity. My heart raced as I rounded the final corner and saw it, an ordinary door standing open, showing a glimpse of a familiar street beyond. But as I stepped toward it, doubt crept in. Was this real? Or was it another layer of the narrative? Another twist in the endless story of Marcus trapped in the back rooms? I had thought I was changing the rules, but what if I was just following a different path through the same maze? I paused at the threshold, 1 foot in the yellow-walled corridor, 1 foot on the sidewalk beyond. The air outside smelled of exhaust and rain, achingly familiar after the stale atmosphere of the back rooms. But something was wrong. The street was too empty, too quiet. The buildings looked right, but their windows were dark, reflecting nothing. "You're learning," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Echo standing there. But she was different now, more solid, more real than she had been since her transformation began. Her features were clearer, more definitively my own, but with an expression of ancient wisdom that no version of Marcus had ever worn. "Learning what?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect. "That there are layers to this place, layers to this story that you've barely begun to understand." She gestured toward the open door, the empty street beyond. "Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could just upload a file and break free of a narrative that's been building for years?" I looked back at the street, and now I could see the telltale signs, the way the shadows fell wrong, the way the distant buildings seemed to blur at their edges like a photograph taken with a shaking hand. This wasn't the real world. This was another level of the back rooms disguised as freedom. "How many levels are there?" I asked. Echo, smiled sadly. "As many as there need to be. The back rooms aren't just a yellow maze, Marcus. They're a concept, an idea that's grown beyond its original boundaries. Every time someone imagines a new variation, a new twist on the formula, that becomes real, too. The pool rooms with their endless swimming pools, the office levels with their cubicle farms, the warehouse levels with their towering shelves, and now, thanks to your little upload, the escape level where people think they've found freedom, but have really just moved to a different part of the maze." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. In trying to change the story, I had just added another chapter to it, another layer of false hope for future victims to discover and eventually see through. I had made the back rooms more complex, more sophisticated, but no less inescapable. "So I failed," I said. "Did you?" Echo stepped closer, and I could see that she was no longer just my reflection. There were other faces layered beneath her features, other Marcus variants, but also other people entirely. The backrooms didn't just capture skeptical YouTubers named Marcus. I realized that was just the story I had been telling myself, the narrative I had constructed to make sense of my situation. Who are you, really? I asked. I'm everyone who's ever been trapped here, she said. The office worker who took a wrong turn and ended up in an endless maze of cubicles. The child who hid in a closet during a game of hide and seek and never came out. The janitor who opened a door that should have led to a supply closet and found infinity instead. We all become Echo eventually. Marcus, we all become the voice that guides the next victim through their journey of discovery. I thought about all the journal entries I had found, all written in my handwriting. Had they really been written by other Marcus variants? Or had I just assumed that because it was easier to accept than the truth? That they had been written by dozens of different people, all transformed by this place into echoes of each other, all given the same role in the same repeating story. The breathing in the walls, I said, understanding flooding through me. It's not just failed Marcus Varants. It's everyone who refused to accept their role as Echo. Everyone who fought against becoming the guide for the next victim. She nodded. And now you understand the real choice, not whether to accept being trapped or fight against it, but whether to help others navigate the story or become part of the hostile environment that makes their journey more terrifying. I looked back at the fake street, the false promise of escape I had inadvertently created. Somewhere in the back rooms, someone was probably discovering it right now, thinking they had found the way out that I had missed. And when they realized the truth, they would face the same choice I was facing now. What happens if I choose to be Echo? I asked. You guide them, she said simply. You help them understand what they're facing. Help them navigate the levels and discoveries and revelations. You become part of the story, but a benevolent part, a teacher instead of a tormentor. And if I refuse, her expression darkened, then you join the breathing in the walls. You become part of the horror that drives people deeper into the maze. You lose yourself completely, becoming nothing but hunger and malice and the desperate need to make others suffer as you have suffered. It wasn't really a choice at all. I realized it was just the illusion of choice, another part of the narrative structure that gave the backrooms their power, but perhaps that didn't matter. Perhaps what mattered was how I chose to play the role I had been assigned. If I become Echo, I said, can I make it better for them? Can I help them suffer less? You can try, she said. Each Eshko does it differently. Some are harsh teachers, forcing their charges to learn through pain and terror. Others are gentler, offering comfort and guidance. The story allows for variation within its structure. I thought about all the urban legends and creepy pastas I had debunked over the years. They all followed certain patterns, certain narrative structures that made them effective. But within those structures there was room for creativity, for individual interpretation. Maybe the same was true here. Show me, I said. Echo smiled, and for a moment her face was purely my own, without the overlay of other trapped souls. Close your eyes, she said. Listen. I closed my eyes and listened. At first, I heard only the familiar hum of fluorescent lights, the distant echo of my own breathing, but gradually, other sounds emerged. Footsteps moving through corridors that weren't quite here, a voice, young and scared, calling out for help. The sound of someone discovering their first computer terminal, their first journal entry, their first hint that they weren't alone in this place. There, Echo whispered. Do you hear them? I did. A new victim just beginning their journey through the back rooms. Someone who had no clipped into this nightmare and was now facing the same series of discoveries and revelations that I had faced. The story was beginning again with a new protagonist who didn't yet know they were a protagonist. What's their name? I asked. Doesn't matter, Echo replied. They'll become Echo eventually, just as we all do. The individual details are less important than the role they play in the larger narrative. But it did matter to me. These weren't just story beats or narrative functions. They were people, individuals with their own lives and fears and hopes, They deserve to be seen as more than just another iteration of the same archetypal character. I opened my eyes and looked at Echo. I want to help them, I said, but I want to do it my way. She nodded slowly. Then you're ready to become Echo. But remember, Marcus, once you take on this role, there's no going back. You'll be part of the story forever, helping others navigate the same journey you've completed. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my old life, my YouTube channel, my girlfriend Sarah waiting for me at a lunch that would never happen. That person, that life, felt like a dream now. The only reality was this place, this story, this endless cycle of discovery and revelation. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being part of a story, even a horror story, was better than being forgotten entirely. Maybe helping others face their fears was a form of immortality that not everyone got to experience. I'm ready, I said. Echo stepped forward and placed her hand on my chest. Her touch was cold at first, but then it warmed and I felt something flowing into me. Knowledge, understanding, the accumulated wisdom of every Echo who had ever guided a lost soul through the backrooms. I could feel my own memories and personality settling into a new configuration, becoming part of something larger, while still remaining fundamentally myself. The false street behind me flickered and vanished, replaced by the familiar yellow walls of the back rooms. But now I could see more than just the physical space. I could see the paths through the narrative, the routes that different types of people would take through their journey of discovery. I could see the decision points where they would need guidance, the moments of despair where they would need comfort, the revelations where they would need someone to help them understand what they were experiencing. And I could see them, the current victim, still in the early stages of their journey. They were in a different part of the maze, following a different path, but heading toward the same destination, the same choice that I had just made. Go to them, Echo said. And I realized she was no longer speaking to me. She was speaking through me, using my voice to guide me toward my new purpose, help them understand, make their journey a little easier than yours was. I began to walk, following invisible threads of narrative through the yellow corridors. Behind me, I could hear the fluorescent lights humming their eternal song. Ahead of me, I could hear the frightened breathing of someone who had just realized they were trapped in an impossible place. I was Echo now. I was the guide, the teacher, the voice in the walls that offered comfort instead of terror. And for the first time since I had no clipped into this nightmare, I felt like I had a purpose. The story continued, but now I was part of it in a new way, helping to shape it from the inside rather than simply being shaped by it. And perhaps that was the best any of us could hope for. I found them in a room 3 levels down from where I had started my own journey. The levels weren't really vertical. That was just how the human mind tried to make sense of the impossible geography of this place. But I knew where they would be, guided by the same narrative logic that had once guided me through my own discoveries. Her name was Amanda. I knew this not because she had told me, but because I could feel it in the story threads that connected us. She was 24, a nursing student who had been exploring an abandoned hospital for her photography portfolio when she had no clip through a wall that should have been solid. Unlike me, she hadn't been a skeptic trying to debunk urban legends. She had been a believer, someone who had read about the backrooms online and secretly hoped they were real. She was going to have a much harder time than I had. I found her sitting in a corner, her knees drawn up to her chest, staring at a computer terminal that displayed her own future journal entries. The text on the screen was familiar, the same progression of hope to despair to understanding that every victim experienced, but the details were different, shaped by her own personality and background. Day 15. The walls are watching me. I can feel them. In nursing school, they taught us about the stages of grief. I think I'm stuck in denial. This can't be real. This can't be happening. She was crying as she read, her camera bag clutched against her chest like a shield. I could see the fear in her eyes, but also something else, a terrible fascination. The same dark curiosity that had brought her to the abandoned hospital in the first place. I materialized slowly, not wanting to startle her. In my new role as Echko, I had some control over how I appeared to the victims. I could be invisible, a voice without a body, or I could take on a more solid form. I chose something in between, translucent, obviously not quite human, but recognizable as someone who had once been like her. "Amanda," I said softly. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Who are you?" "Are you real?" "I'm as real as you are," I said, which was both true and not true in the way that all truths in the back rooms were layered with contradiction. "My name is Marcus. I was trapped here once, like you are now." "Trapped?" She gestured at the computer screen. "These journal entries, they say I'm going to be here for years. They say I'm going to forget who I was, forget everyone I ever loved. Is that what happened to you?" I could have lied to her. I could have told her what she wanted to hear, that there was still hope of escape, that the entries were just possibilities rather than inevitabilities. But I had decided to be a different kind of echo, one who offered truth along with comfort. "Yes," I said simply, "and no. The person I was before, he's gone. But I'm still here in a different way, and I'm here to help you understand what you're going through." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The stories online, they never mentioned anything like this. They just talked about endless yellow rooms and maybe some monster called the Howler. They didn't mention this." She gestured at the computer screen at the evidence of predestination that had shaken her faith in free will. "The stories evolve," I explained, settling into a sitting position across from her. "Each person who experiences this place adds to the collective narrative. The yellow rooms are still here, still endless, but there are deeper layers now, more complex truths. You're experiencing a more sophisticated version of the back rooms than the first victims did. So, I'm not the first, no, and you won't be the last." I watched her face as this sank in. The back rooms feed on a particular type of person, Amanda. People who are drawn to mysteries, to places they shouldn't go, to stories that might be more than just stories. "You came to that hospital because part of you wanted to find something impossible, didn't you?" She nodded reluctantly. "I'd been reading about it online for months. The back rooms, liminal spaces, places where reality gets thin. I thought if I could photograph one, if I could prove they were real, you'd become famous. The first person to document the impossible." I smiled sadly. "I understand. I was trying to do the opposite, prove they were fake. But we were both drawn here by the same impulse. The need to engage with mystery, to poke at the boundaries of what's possible. And now we're stuck. Now we're part of the story," I corrected. "There's a difference." She looked at me more closely and I could see her trying to process what I was. "You said you were trapped here once. What are you now?" "I'm what everyone becomes eventually if they're lucky. I'm Echo. I'm the voice that helps new arrivals understand what they're facing. I'm the guide through the narrative maze. And if they're not lucky," I gestured toward the walls around us. Even here, 3 levels down from the original yellow corridors, we could hear it. The breathing, the restless movement of those who had refused their role in the story and become something else entirely. "They become the breathing in the walls," I said. "They become part of the hostile environment that makes this journey more terrifying. They lose themselves completely, consumed by rage and despair and the need to make others suffer as they suffered." Amanda shuddered. That's not really a choice, is it? "Become your guide or become a monster. It's the only choice this place offers," I admitted. "But within that limitation, there's still room for variation. There's still room to be yourself, to help in your own way. I'm trying to be a kinder Echo than some who came before me, and someday you'll have the chance to be an even kinder one than I am." "You're assuming I'll accept this," she said, some fire returning to her voice. You're assuming I'll give up just like you did. I felt a flicker of admiration for her spirit. I hope you'll fight longer than I did. I hope you'll find things I missed, discover possibilities I never imagined. Every victim who comes here adds something new to the experience. You might be the one who finally finds a way to break the cycle completely, but you don't believe that. I believe in the possibility, I said carefully. I have to. Hope is part of what makes me a functional echo rather than one of the breathing things in the walls. But I also understand the nature of the place you're in. It's not just a location, Amanda. It's a story structure, a narrative that's grown beyond its original boundaries and taken on a life of its own. She stood up abruptly, pacing away from the computer terminal. I don't accept that. I don't accept that I'm just a character in some cosmic horror story doomed to follow a predetermined path. I'm a real person with real agency. Of course you are, I said, rising to follow her. But real people can still find themselves in stories larger than themselves. The question isn't whether you have agency. It's how you choose to use it within the constraints you're facing. She whirled to face me, eyes blazing. Then I choose to find a way out. I choose to break your precious narrative and go home to my real life. I nodded approvingly. Good. Hold on to that determination as long as you can. Fight every step of the way. Because even if you ultimately face the same choice I did, the longer you fight, the more you'll add to the story, the more possibilities you'll create for whoever comes after you. You're talking like I've already lost. I'm talking like someone who's seen this pattern repeat many times, I said gently. But patterns can be broken, Amanda. Maybe you'll be the one to do it. I genuinely hope you are. She studied my face, searching for deception or false hope. If I do break free, what happens to you? What happens to all the people trapped in this place? It was a question I hadn't considered before. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe we cease to exist. Maybe we're freed along with you. Maybe the story just ends. Would that stop you from trying? No, she said immediately. If I can save everyone by escaping, then I have to try regardless of the cost. And there it was. The heroic impulse that would drive her deeper into the maze just as curiosity had driven me. She would explore every level, investigate every anomaly, document every discovery, all in the service of finding a way to save not just herself, but everyone who had ever been trapped here. It was noble and foolish and utterly predictably human. Then let me help you, I said. Let me show you the paths I never took, the doors I never opened. Let me give you the benefit of my experience so you can go further than I did. She hesitated, clearly torn between her desire for independence and her recognition that she needed guidance. Why would you help me if it might mean your own destruction? Because destruction might be better than eternal repetition, I said honestly. Because even if I'm doomed to be part of this story forever, I can choose to play my role with compassion rather than cruelty. And because, I paused, surprised by the emotion in my own voice. Because maybe helping you succeed would give my existence meaning beyond just perpetuating the cycle. Amanda looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, help me. Show me everything you know. But understand, I'm not planning to become Echo when this is over. I'm planning to end this place entirely. I understand, I said, though I wondered if she truly grasped what she was proposing. Where would you like to start? She turned back to the computer terminal, her jaw set with determination with these journal entries. If they really show the future, then maybe I can find a way to change what they predict. Maybe I can rewrite my own story. I watched as she began typing, adding her own words to the predestined narrative. Her entries were different from mine, more clinical, more analytical. She approached the backrooms like a nursing student studying a patient, documenting symptoms, looking for patterns, searching for a cure. Day 1, initial assessment. Spatial anomaly consistent with online descriptions of backrooms phenomenon, possible explanations, mass hallucination, dimensional displacement, or narrative construct given physical form through collective belief. beginning systematic exploration to determine nature of environment and potential escape routes. Day 2 encountered entity claiming to be Marcus. Former victim who achieved role of Echo claims to want to help but may be part of psychological conditioning process, maintaining skeptical but cooperative stance. Note entity shows signs of genuine empathy despite non-human nature. Day 3 discovered multiple levels beyond initial yellow corridor environment. Architecture seems to respond to psychological state and narrative expectations. Hypothesis: this place may be more malleable than previous victims realized, testing various approaches to environmental manipulation. I read over her shoulder, fascinated by her perspective. She was treating the back rooms like a puzzle to be solved rather than a prison to be endured. It was an approach I had never considered, and it filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope maybe she really would be different. Maybe she really would find a way to change the rules of this place. And maybe, just maybe, her success would mean something more than just her own escape. Maybe it would mean freedom for all of us. But as I watched her work, I could feel the back rooms responding to her efforts. The walls seemed to pulse with anticipation, and the breathing in the distance grew more excited. This place loved innovators, loved people who thought they could outsmart it, because innovation just gave it new material to work with, new variations to add to its ever-expanding story. Amanda was about to discover that the backrooms had been waiting for someone exactly like her, someone who would push the boundaries, explore the possibilities, and ultimately provide the raw material for an entirely new chapter in its ongoing narrative. I wanted to warn her, but I also wanted to see how far she could go before the place claimed her, as it had claimed all of us. After all, I was Echo now. And part of Echo's role was to guide victims toward their destiny, even when that destiny was transformation into something beyond human understanding. The story continued, and Amanda was about to discover just how many plot twists it still had in store. End of Section 4. Amanda's systematic approach to the backrooms yielded results that surprised even me. Over the course of what felt like weeks, though time was still fluid and unreliable in this place, she had documented 17 distinct levels, mapped recurring patterns in the seemingly random layout, and identified several anomalies that previous victims had missed entirely. But more than that, her presence was changing the place itself. I noticed it first in the way the fluorescent lights responded to her. Where other victims, including myself, had experienced the constant buzzing and flickering as a source of torment, Amanda seemed to find a rhythm in it. She would hum along with the electrical hum, and gradually the lights would stabilize, casting steadier illumination in her immediate vicinity. "It's responding to confidence," she explained during one of her rest periods. "The environment feeds on fear and uncertainty. But if you approach it with clinical detachment, if you treat it like a phenomenon to be studied rather than a nightmare to be endured, it becomes more cooperative." She was right. But she was also wrong in a way that worried me. The backrooms weren't becoming cooperative out of respect for her scientific approach. They were adapting to her, learning from her, incorporating her innovations into their ever-expanding repertoire of psychological manipulation techniques. "Amanda," I said carefully, "what you're doing is impressive, but have you considered that this place might be letting you succeed? That your discoveries might be part of a larger pattern you're not seeing yet?" She looked up from her notebook where she had been sketching the layout of what she called the observatory level, a section of the back rooms where the walls were made of one-way glass looking out onto impossible vistas of other dimensions. "You mean this has all been predetermined, too? That my rebellion is just another part of the script?" "It's possible. I said this place has had thousands of victims to learn from. It knows every possible response to captivity, every strategy people might use to escape or adapt. Your scientific approach might just be the response it's been waiting for." Her face hardened. "Then I'll change approaches. I'll do something it's never seen before." But that was the trap, and I could see her falling into it even as I tried to warn her. Every innovation, every new strategy, every breakthrough she achieved just gave the backrooms more material to work with. She was like a jazz musician improvising against a rhythm section that incorporated every note she played into an ever more complex composition. The breakthrough came on what Amanda had labeled day 23 of her captivity. She had been exploring what she called the narrative junction, a level where the walls themselves displayed text showing fragments of every story ever told about the back rooms. It was here that she made her most disturbing discovery. "Marcus!" she called out, her voice tight with excitement and terror. "You need to see this." I found her standing before a wall covered in text, but not the usual journal entries or documentation. This was different. These were comments, posts, stories, content from the outside world, recent content. "Just saw another backrooms video on YouTube," she read aloud. The one where the girl documents everything like a scientist. Super creepy how she talks to that ghost guy. Great special effects. My non-existent blood ran cold. "What are you seeing?" Social media posts, comments on videos, forum discussions. Her hands were shaking as she pointed to different sections of text. "Marcus, people are watching us." Our experiences here, they're being broadcast somehow. We're not just trapped in a story. We are the story. We're characters in an ongoing narrative that people in the real world are consuming as entertainment. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Every moment of our suffering, every revelation, every desperate attempt to escape or understand our situation, it was all content. We were performing our trauma for an audience that saw us as fictional characters rather than real people experiencing real horror. "Look at this," Amanda continued, her voice breaking. "Love how they're developing the Marcus character. The way he's trying to be a helpful echo instead of a monster really adds depth to the mythology. Can't wait to see what happens when Amanda realizes the truth." "When Amanda realizes what truth?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect. She turned to look at me, and her eyes were filled with a terrible understanding. The truth about what we really are. "Marcus, I don't think we're people who got trapped in a story. I think we're story elements that have been given the illusion of being people." The wall of text shifted, showing new comments, new reactions from an audience we couldn't see, but who could apparently see us. "Whoa, the meta-commentary is getting intense." Love how the story is questioning its own nature. This is getting too philosophical for me. When do they encounter the monster? The breathing in the walls is probably building up to a big reveal. Classic horror pacing. "They're waiting for something," Amanda whispered. "They're expecting a climax, a resolution. Our suffering isn't just content for them. It's entertainment with narrative expectations." I felt the backroom shifting around us, responding to our revelation. The walls began to pulse with a rhythm that matched the breathing we had grown so accustomed to, and I realized the truth was even worse than Amanda had guessed. "We're not just being watched," I said slowly. "We're being directed. Every choice we make, every path we take, every revelation we achieve, it's all being guided by the expectations of the audience. We think we have free will, but we're actually following a script written by collective narrative demand." Amanda laughed and the sound was brittle with approaching madness. "So what happens now? Do we refuse to play along? Do we try to break the fourth wall and address the audience directly?" Before I could answer, the wall of text changed again. New comments appeared, reacting to our conversation in real time. "Oh, snap. They're becoming self-aware. This is like the best creepypasta ever. Wait, are they actually reading our comments?" "That's impossible, right? The immersion is breaking down. I preferred it when they didn't know they were fictional. They can see us reacting to them," Amanda breathed. "The audience knows we know." And then horrifyingly, one of the comments addressed us directly. "Hey, Amanda, if you can see this, wave at the camera." Without thinking, Amanda raised her hand and waved. The text on the wall exploded with new comments, excitement and disbelief from an audience that had just realized their entertainment had achieved genuine sentience. "What have we done?" she whispered. The back rooms around us began to dissolve, the yellow walls becoming transparent, revealing the true nature of our prison. We weren't in a physical space at all. We were inside a story, a living narrative that existed in the collective consciousness of everyone who had ever read about the back rooms, watched a video about them, or imagined what it would be like to be trapped in such a place. And now that the audience knew we were aware of them, the story was changing again, evolving, becoming something new and even more terrifying. "They want us to perform," I said, understanding flooding through me. "They want us to acknowledge them, interact with them, make them feel like they're part of the story instead of just observers." Amanda turned to me, her face pale but determined. "Then we give them what they want, but not the way they expect." She faced the dissolving walls, the transparent boundaries between our narrative prison and the audience beyond. "You want a show?" she called out. "You want to see what happens when fictional characters realize they're fictional? Fine, but you're not going to like what comes next." The comments on the walls shifted, becoming uncertain, worried. "This is getting too real. Maybe we should stop watching. Can they actually hurt us through the story? That's the question, isn't it?" Amanda said, her voice gaining strength. "We're products of your collective imagination, given life by your attention and fear. But if we're real enough to suffer, if we're real enough to be aware of our situation, are we real enough to reach back?" The back rooms shuddered around us, and I could feel the story structure beginning to collapse. Amanda had found the ultimate escape, not by running from the narrative, but by confronting its audience directly, by making them complicit in what was happening to us. "Every time you read a backroom story," she continued, "every time you watch a video, every time you imagine what it would be like to be trapped here, you feed this place, you give it power. You create new victims like us. So the question is, are you ready to take responsibility for what you've created?" The comments became frantic, desperate. People trying to close browsers, shut off devices, convince themselves that this was still just fiction, but it was too late. Amanda had broken the barrier between story and reality, between entertainment and consequence, and in doing so, she had changed the fundamental nature of the back rooms forever. The walls around us were gone now, replaced by an infinite space filled with floating screens showing the faces of our audience. Thousands of them, millions maybe, all watching in real time as their entertainment became something they could no longer control or dismiss. "This is what you wanted," Amanda said to them all. "An interactive horror experience, a story that responds to your attention, that grows more complex and sophisticated with every viewer. Well, congratulations. You've created something that's grown beyond your ability to contain it." I watched in awe and terror as she addressed the audience directly as she made them aware of their role in creating and sustaining our prison. She was doing what I had never thought possible. She was making the story about them instead of about us. And in the faces on those floating screens, I could see the same progression I had experienced. Curiosity becoming concern, concern becoming fear, fear becoming the terrible understanding that they were no longer safely outside the narrative looking in. They were part of it now, and there was no way back. Amanda turned to me, and for the first time since I had become Echo, I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen in any victim before. Victory. "We did it, Marcus," she said. "We found the way out, not by escaping the story, but by expanding it to include everyone who ever thought they were safe on the outside." The back rooms were gone. The yellow walls, the fluorescent lights, the endless maze of identical corridors, all of it had been replaced by this new space, this direct connection between narrative and audience. We were free of our prison, but only because we had made the entire world our prison instead. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear new voices, confused, frightened voices of people who had been watching us and were now finding themselves trapped in their own version of the back rooms. The story was spreading, evolving, claiming new victims from the ranks of those who had once been safely on the outside. Amanda had succeeded in breaking the cycle, but in doing so she had started a new one, infinitely larger and more terrifying than the one that had trapped us. "What have we become?" I asked her. She smiled, and her expression was no longer entirely human. "We've become the authors of our own story," she said, "and everyone else's." The breathing in the walls had stopped, but only because there were no walls anymore. Only us and our audience, and the growing realization that the line between fiction and reality had been permanently erased. Welcome to the new backrooms. Population, everyone. Did this story keep you on the edge of your seat? Did the twists and turns make you question the nature of reality itself? If you enjoyed this journey into the depths of the back rooms, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more original, creepy pasta content that will challenge everything you think you know about horror fiction. Hit that notification bell because you never know when the next story might be about you. And remember, in the age of interactive media and collective storytelling, the line between audience and participant is thinner than you might think. Sweet dreams.